Chapter 2836. Meow. Luo Qingtong's body was picked up by a pair of hands at once. Why is there such a cute kitten here? This voice sounded. In an instant, Luo Qingtong's originally raised claws to scratch the other party fiercely suddenly stopped, and the sharp claws were retracted. This voice, was it Sueyu and the others? Sure enough, just as she was thinking, the other people's voices sounded. Hey, it's true. How did this kitten appear here? It looks so cute as snow. Did it get separated from its owner? A group of maidservants surrounded it. The little white cat that Luo Qingtong transformed into looked very cute. There was not a single strand of mixed hair on its body. It looked as white as snow, like a soft ball of wool. It was also like a ball of pure white snow, making people unable to stop loving it when they looked at it. Ordinary people wouldn't have such a cat. And just from its appearance, Luo Qingtong did not look like a spiritual beast. There was not a trace of spiritual aura. Everyone thought that it was the pet of some aristocratic family's legitimate daughter, and it got lost in the main square. At this moment, it was anxiously looking around for its owner. After all, the way Luo Qingtong moved and jumped in the square just now, it really looked like it was anxiously looking for its owner. In fact, she wanted to go back to the inn. This way she could go back to her original body to find Su Xiaoxiao and the others. However, before she could go back, she was intercepted by Sueyu and the others halfway. Luo Qingtong's face was gloomy. If it weren't for Sueyu and the others holding her, she would definitely scratch them with her claws and then take the opportunity to run away. But forget about Sueyu and the others. She would think of a way to sneak away later. There was no need to hurt them. Thinking of this, she immediately lay obediently in Sueyu's arms. Her well-behaved appearance attracted the exclamations of the maidservants. Everyone rubbed it with incomparable fondness. It simply made Luo Qingtong feel that there was nothing left to live for. Meow. Don't go too far, hey. Be careful that I don't care about old feelings and scratch you. Luo Qingtong bristled. At this moment, Ji Feiyu's voice sounded, relieving her of the crisis of being almost crushed to death by a group of women. The man's clear and gentle voice rang out. What's going on? Nothing, young master. When Sueyu and the others saw Luo Qingtong's anger and heard Ji Feiyu's voice, they immediately restrained themselves. They happily hugged Luo Qingtong and returned to Ji Feiyu's carriage. They said to him, Young master, we saw a lost kitten. We don't know which family's daughter's pet is. Can we take it with us first? If no one comes to look for it, we'll raise it ourselves. Luo Qingtong listened to Sueyu's words and her lips twitched. Who's the lost cat? I'm fine on the road. Can you guys not add scenes for me? What kind of things were they imagining? Luo Qingtong was speechless. Unfortunately, she was in Xiao Tuanzi's body and couldn't speak. Even if she could speak, she would resolutely not say it. Who would be willing to let others know that they had turned into a cat? Such a silly and cute appearance, she absolutely couldn't let others know. Luo Qingtong finally understood the feeling of having nothing left to live for when Yi Qianxian turned into a little fox. Fortunately, she didn't turn into a cat in front of that man. Otherwise, she didn't know how he would torture her. Chapter 2837. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. Even if she was beaten to death, she had to bury this experience. She definitely couldn't let Yi Qianxian, that man, torment her. Especially, she couldn't let him open the door to a new world. Just as Luo Qingtong was thinking about this, Ji Feiyu's cold and gentle voice sounded, and if that's the case, then keep it for now. But if there's an owner looking for it, you have to return it at the first moment. Ji Feiyu looked at the little white cat in Sueyu's arms. It was like a snowball, abnormally cute. Its pair of eyes seemed to be able to speak, and at this moment, its eyes were constantly moving. For some reason, Ji Feiyu actually faintly saw a bit of depression and confusion in its eyes, as well as an extremely helpless expression. This should be fake, right? How could a cat be so human-like? Ji Feiyu couldn't help but take another look at this little cat. After confirming that it really didn't have any spiritual aura and wasn't some spiritual beast with spiritual intelligence, he immediately shook his head and secretly laughed. He was really thinking too much. His voice sounded, and immediately Sueyu and the others cheered and jumped in joy. They really liked this little white cat. If the young master didn't agree to let them keep it, they would definitely be very disappointed. Fortunately, the young master had always been very gentle and considerate, and would never refute their reasonable requests. For such a young master to be able to serve him, it was really their blessing. Everyone was so happy that they kept rubbing Luo Qingtong. The latter already couldn't take it anymore. Seeing that they still wanted to come, she couldn't care about anything else. With a meow, she jumped into Ji Feiyu's carriage and sat on his shoulder. One of her tails circled around his neck, and she wouldn't leave even if she was beaten to death. Damn, Sueyu and the others were too terrifying. Why didn't I see before that these women actually liked small animals so much? What happened to the image of a tomboy? Sueyu, weren't you especially domineering when you were teaching that Commander Qin a lesson? Meow. Stay away from me. Luo Qingtong glared at Sueyu and the others, who asked her to be unable to scratch them so she could only stay away from them. Her action stunned Sueyu and the others, then they laughed. Young master, look, it likes you. They looked at the scene of Luo Qingtong's tail tightly wrapped around Ji Feiyu's neck, and they couldn't help but cover their mouths and laugh. Young master was indeed a very gentle person, even small animals liked to get close to him. Hearing their words, Luo Qingtong's lips suddenly, the corners of her mouth fiercely. These women, who in the end to like your family's young master? If it wasn't to avoid your claws would be like this? Damn it. But they, Sueyu and the others? Anyway, she was just a cat. Chapter 28:38. No, kitten, young master's body is injured. You should stay by his feet. When they made their move, Luo Qingtong was originally prepared to avoid them. But when she heard their words, Luo Qingtong's body suddenly stopped, allowing Sueyu and the others to carry her down. He was injured? Luo Qingtong looked up at Ji Feiyu, only to discover that the other party's face was faintly pale. But because he had always been weak, there was no color on his face, so it was not very obvious. But now Luo Qingtong received a hint from Sueyu and the others, so she naturally saw it. It was indeed a sign of insufficient qi and blood. What's going on? In this star city, there was actually someone who could bypass Qin Xiong's protection and injure him? But why didn't she hear any movement? Such a big matter, there was no reason that there was no news in Star City. Could it be that Qin Xiong and the others deliberately let people injure him? But that couldn't be right. Unless Qin Xiong and the others wanted to die, otherwise they would never let Ji Feiyu suffer the slightest injury. Luo Qingtong could see it from the team before. Although Qin Xiong and the others looked down on Ji Feiyu, they felt that he was a waste as the legitimate son of the family Ji. But they only dared to obey in public but oppose in private. It was absolutely impossible for them to openly rebel against Ji Feiyu, or disobey his orders, causing Ji Feiyu to be injured. Just the family Ji's investigation alone could make them die hundreds of times. Then what was the reason? Luo Qingtong thought so, immediately straightened up and sat at Ji Feiyu's feet, then saw the exposed wound on Ji Feiyu's wrist. It was a very serious wound, so deep that the bone could be seen. Did the family Ji not have medicinal pills? They actually left Ji Feiyu's wound like this? Luo Qingtong looked at the wound on Ji Feiyu's wrist with a surprised expression. The latter, however, raised his hand to cover his wound. Looking at Luo Qingtong's curious gaze, he suddenly smiled and said, "Did I scare you? Don't worry, it's fine now. I've covered it." His voice was very gentle, as if he was talking to a child instead of a small animal. He raised his hand and patted Luo Qingtong's head. She resisted the urge to dodge and went to the other side of Ji Feiyu. She lifted her claws and pressed them on Ji Feiyu's uninjured wrist, carefully checking his pulse. Previously, when she was with the family Ji motorcade, she had wanted to check Ji Feiyu's pulse. The other party's situation was very strange. He clearly had sufficient life force, but his body was weak and his aura was weak. This was obviously not right. However, there were many people in the motorcade and Ji Feiyu stayed in the carriage every day, so Luo Qingtong couldn't get close to him. Most importantly, he was Mo Zhuling's fiancé, and she was mistakenly thought by Sueyu and the others that she liked him, so she couldn't get close to him. Otherwise, how miserable would it be to be blamed for being a green tea bitch? This was a rare opportunity, so Luo Qingtong took a look for him. She stepped on Ji Feiyu's wrist with her soft little cushion. It felt numb and itchy, but it was very comfortable. In addition, Luo Qingtong's cat claws were naturally not as convenient as a human hand, so she couldn't feel his pulse accurately several times. In order to be able to check carefully, she immediately jumped left and right on Ji Feiyu's left wrist. Chapter 28:39. Ah, this little white cat is so cute. She must be wondering why young master's other hand is different from the previous one. Yes. Ah, stupid, so cute. Sueyu and the others surrounded Ji Feiyu's carriage and looked at Luo Qingtong's fluttering movements. They immediately convulsed with laughter. Luo Qingtong listened to their words and gritted her teeth. Who were these guys calling stupid? Were they bullying her for not knowing how to speak? She was clearly checking her pulse. She glared at Sueyu and the others. The latter and the others' laughter had almost stopped. Now that they saw her glare, they couldn't help but laugh and say, Look, she's glaring at us. So cute she must be shy. Yes, she's angry. Luo Qingtong's heart really hurt when she heard this. She didn't want to pay attention to this group of unreasonable women. Ji Feiyu looked at this scene and couldn't help but laugh for a while. He raised his other hand, clenched his fist and put it to his lips. He coughed lightly and then laughed softly. Damn, this man is also laughing. Luo Qingtong didn't have time to fly into a rage when she heard Ji Feiyu's cough become hurried. Young master. Sui Yu and the others didn't have time to tease the little white cat and hurriedly surrounded Ji Feiyu. A few people patted his back, and another person raised his hand to take off his outer clothes, then revealed the white cloth wrapped inside that was already soaked with blood. You're bleeding again. Young master, did you just pull on your wound? Everyone hurriedly bandaged Ji Feiyu's wound and changed his clothes. Ji Feiyu saw that they were busy and said softly, "It's okay, it will be fine soon." Young master, you're lying. Your injuries have always been self-healing, and any medicinal powder is ineffective. It takes a long time every time and the pain is increasing day by day. Sui Yu's eyes were red. Young master, why didn't you go easy on him? Anyway, as long as Qin Xiong and the others are scared, they won't dare to chase after little Seven. Hearing her words, Ji Feiyu immediately smiled bitterly and said to her, Qin Xiong was stubborn to the extreme at that time. If I didn't let him know that I was determined, he wouldn't have stopped. What's more, I only poked myself in the chest at that time. It's my body that's disappointing. He sighed softly at this point. His initial slash at the arm was indeed exceptionally resolute and ruthless, but the subsequent slash at the chest he actually didn't stab in. It was just a light prick on the skin and it became like this. His body was becoming more and more dilapidated. As Ji Feiyu said this, he immediately lowered his eyes to hide the dim light in his eyes. Moreover, I intimidated Qin Xiong for my own reasons. It was not entirely for little Seven. At this point he suddenly said in a low voice, I want to cancel the engagement. What? Sui Yu and the others were shocked. They looked at Ji Feiyu with indescribable shock on their faces. They never thought that Ji Feiyu would have such a plan in his heart. But, young master, this engagement was personally promised by the old family head to the Star Alliance's leader. Yes, young master. Chapter 2840. The leader of the Star Alliance had saved the old family head's life by chance. The latter had promised to let the third generation of the family Ji's descendants marry Mo Zhuling. Thus, Ji Feiyu had been pushed out. As the son of the family Ji's first wife, he shouldn't have been the one to marry Mo Zhuling. However, because he didn't have any power and couldn't cultivate, he was seen as a disgrace to the family Ji. Once this matter came out, everyone immediately pushed the blame onto Ji Feiyu. The old patriarch also knew that this matter would make things difficult for his family's disciples, so he turned a blind eye to it. Just like that, Ji Feiyu, as the son of a top family in the 8-star region, was forced to marry a girl from a low-level family in the 9-star region. Many people used this matter to mock him. This made his life, which was already mocked because of his lack of power, even worse. Everyone felt sorry for Ji Feiyu, but they also knew that if Ji Feiyu suddenly broke off the engagement, he would be severely punished when he returned. After all, the family Ji's people pushed Ji Feiyu out to marry because they wanted to build a good reputation for being trustworthy. Thus, if Ji Feiyu broke off the engagement, the family would be furious. Everyone looked at Ji Feiyu with red eyes. They didn't know why he had such a plan. Ji Feiyu's life in the family Ji wasn't good to begin with. Now that he wanted to break off the engagement, was he pushing himself to his death? Sir, if you don't like the eldest daughter of the Star Alliance, you can just marry her and not touch her. You can find another girl that you like, okay? Sir, it's not good for you to break off the engagement. The maidservant's eyes all turned red. Ji Feiyu sighed softly. I don't dislike her. He hadn't even met Mo Zhuling, so how could he dislike her? However, you all know that my body is simply too damaged. If it's simply because I lack talent and am unable to cultivate, then so be it. However, I am born with a weak body. I don't even know how long I can live. I'm already feeling more and more powerless. Star Alliance's eldest daughter will feel wronged if she marries me. There are countless good men in this world. She shouldn't hang herself on a rotten tree like me just because of the family Ji's selfishness and face. Ji Feiyu analyzed his thoughts to the maidservants around him. Sui Yu and the others were his personal bodyguards and maidservants that his mother had chosen for him since he was young. They were almost like siblings. He had always had the idea of breaking off the engagement, but in order not to alert the enemy, he had never said it out loud. This time I came to the Star Alliance to break off the engagement. As long as I act a little arrogant and show in front of everyone that I don't like Emo Zhuling, when the engagement is broken off, it will all be my fault. At this point he suddenly coughed a few times. Then he suppressed the sweet and fishy taste in his throat. When the time comes, the leader of the Star Alliance will be able to ask the family G for enough compensation based on the kindness of the past. When the time comes, it doesn't matter if the eldest daughter of the Star Alliance marries someone else or chooses another descendant of my family G. At least I won't be holding her back. Don't you all agree? A girl's blooming years shouldn't be wasted on a cripple like me. I've already thought about this matter. You don't need to persuade me anymore. When he said this, Sueyu and the others immediately choked with sobs. Chapter 2841. No wonder Ji Feiyu didn't express any happiness or opposition when the marriage was mentioned. It turned out that he had been waiting for this day to come. Only when the Star Alliance announced the cancellation of the marriage in front of everyone would the family Ji, who was far away from the 8-star region, be unable to react in time. Only then could the family Ji have no choice but to agree to the cancellation of the marriage and give Emo Zhuling a large sum of money as compensation. Alternatively, they could choose another family Ji's son to marry Emo Zhuling. This way Emo Zhuling wouldn't be delayed. Why was the young master so stupid? He thought of everyone, but why didn't he think of himself? In this marriage he was the most innocent and the one who was hurt the most. Because of this marriage with Emo Zhuling, he had been ridiculed and slandered by others. Now that the marriage was cancelled, Emo Zhuling could escape unscathed, but what about him? What would the young master do when he returned to the family Ji? Not to mention, Emo Zhuling and the Star Alliance might not accept the young master's kindness. The group of servant girls were almost crying. Young master. Their hearts were in pain and they couldn't stop crying. Ji Feiyu gently patted their hands and didn't say anything else. Alright, let's go back. He said softly, I deliberately said that I wanted to go out for a stroll so that I could find an opportunity to talk to you about this. It's good that you know. When that day comes, don't be too nervous and don't try to stop it. As for what happens after we go back, we'll talk about it when we get back. The group of servant girls wiped their tears and then raised their hands to lower the curtains on Ji Feiyu's carriage. The group of people followed the carriage with heavy hearts and left. They didn't care about the Star Alliance's big event happening in front of them. Originally, they had heard that something big had happened here that was related to the Star Alliance and involved Emo Zhuling, so they wanted to come and take a look. But at this moment, everyone was no longer in the mood to do so. She didn't even want to hear anything related to Emo Zhuling's name. She didn't want to feel bad. As a result, he missed the opportunity to find out Emo Zhuling's true colors. Luo Qingtong sat in the carriage and followed Ji Feiyu and the others back to their residence. She looked up at the man in front of her. To be honest, Luo Qingtong was very surprised by Ji Feiyu's words. She had never met a man like Ji Feiyu before. He was clearly in a difficult situation, but he did not develop a sarcastic and cynical temperament. Instead, he was magnanimous, gentle, and radiant. In order not to implicate Emo Zhuling, she was willing to cancel the engagement? He was even afraid that the people of Star Alliance would be blamed by the family Ji, so he was prepared to take the blame himself. He really had a silly temperament. But this silly temperament touched Luo Qingtong's heart. She thought of the time when she was adopted by the old beggar in her previous life. Everyone advised the old beggar that a person like him couldn't even feed himself, let alone raise a child. It was simply a waste of time. But that person said cheerfully, "It's okay. It doesn't matter if I can't feed myself as long as I can feed her." Others called her a monster and a red-eyed disease. He told them that it was because he was a beggar and that he was the one who infected her. That person obviously did not have any abilities and was about to starve to death. But he did his best to protect her as she grew up. If it wasn't for him, Luo Qingtong would have died long ago. Without the awakening of supernatural abilities, without the invincible ocular sorcerer, there would be nothing. And now Ji Feiyu was as silly as the old beggar. Meow. Forget it. Luo Qingtong sighed softly. She was also indebted to Ji Feiyu. This time, she would return the favor and find a way to cure his problem of not being able to cultivate. Chapter 2842. Just as Luo Qingtong was thinking about this, on the other side, in the luxurious mansion of the Star Alliance headquarters, Emo Zhuling opened her eyes. Then with a puff she spat out a mouthful of blood. She fell from the bed and her head hit the pear-blossom wooden chair beside her. Her entire body fell to the ground and she was in an extremely sorry state. Black fog. Emo Zhuling's entire body went limp. When black fog self-destructed, she was wrapped in its power and was severely injured. Fortunately, Black Fog's self-destruction was only a part of its power and Mo Juling's was not affected. Otherwise she wouldn't even be able to come back alive. Thinking about what happened in the virtual mirror array, Mo Juling couldn't help but tremble. She lay on the ground and kept calling out Black Fog's name. Her heart was filled with fear. However, Black Fog didn't answer her. She didn't know if it was because it was severely injured or for some other reason. Thinking that Black Fog might disappear from her life because of this, Mo Juling's heart trembled. Everything she had now came from the Black Fog. Although she really wanted to get rid of it, now was definitely not the time. Damn it, what was the deal with that little white cat in the mirror array? Since when was there such a powerful restriction in the mirror array? Mo Juling's heart was filled with shock and anger. At this moment, Black Fog's weak voice sounded. I need to rest for a while. Don't call me during this time. I won't answer you even if you call me. Find out what's going on with that mirror formation. Black Fog's voice was filled with the same shock and anger as Mo Juling's, as well as shame and anger. It never thought that it would almost die because of a 9-star domain spiritual treasure. What was the deal with that mirror array? How could there be a restriction in it that could hurt it? Even if its power was weakened because of the mirror array, it definitely couldn't be hurt by a 9-star domain spiritual treasure. Black Fog's voice was filled with shame and anger. This time, it had almost failed miserably, causing it to be extremely depressed and angry. It disappeared in front of Mo Juling with its anger. Seeing it leave, Mo Juling calmed down a little. But soon she became angry again. Because she suddenly remembered that she couldn't deal with Su Xiaoxiao and the others. The latter would definitely expose her after they left. However, it doesn't matter. She has already injected a trace of power into the bodies of the people from the high-rank continents. As long as she leaves, their bodies will immediately explode. Under such circumstances, even if Su Xiaoxiao and the others confessed, there would be no evidence. At that time he could say that they were deliberately slandering him. At that time he might even be able to use this opportunity to beat them up. Although they couldn't do anything to them, they could at least make them suffer a little. Not only that, but it could also ruin the reputation of Su Xiaoxiao and the others. The next time he made a move against them, no one would believe them anymore. As Mo Juling thought of this, she suddenly sneered. Her mind was constantly thinking of how to make use of this matter to her advantage. She couldn't wait for Su Xiaoxiao and the others to expose her. Therefore she wasn't anxious at all. She didn't send anyone to the main square to find out the truth. Chapter 2843. Bang! Just as Mo Juling was thinking about how to deal with Su Xiaoxiao and the others, as well as how to turn the tables on them this time, the door to her room was violently kicked open. Because she was too absorbed in her thoughts and her body was too weak to exert any strength, Mo Juling was still lying on the ground, looking indescribably battered and exhausted. At this moment, the door to her room was violently kicked open. She was instantly enraged. Bastard! Who allowed you to enter my room without my permission? She thought it was a servant who was concerned about her safety and heard the commotion in her room, so he rushed in from outside to protect her. However, she didn't expect that the person who rushed in angrily from outside was the leader of the Star Alliance, her father. Unfilial daughter. The leader of the Star Alliance was bristling with anger. He had lost all face in the main square, and now he had almost become the laughingstock of the entire Star Alliance. Everyone knew that he had indiscriminately defended Mo Juling in public. Not only that, he had also slandered Su Xiaoxiao and the others. He appeared to be tolerant and magnanimous, but in reality his conscience was completely black. He had deliberately humiliated and slandered Su Xiaoxiao and the others. Now, Elder Fong and the others had seized the opportunity to make things difficult for him. Not only that, he couldn't explain why Mo Juling had appeared in the mirror array. This had become a weakness that Elder Fong and the others could use against him. Only the heavens knew that the leader of the Star Alliance really didn't know what was going on. How could Mo Juling have entered the mirror array, and no one had reacted to it, so there was no way to know. However, the elders of the Star Alliance didn't listen to his explanation at all. This was especially true for the people on his side. The elders under him were all very disappointed. They felt that he had given this kind of secret to someone like Mo Juling instead of his trusted subordinates. It was really disappointing. In an instant, the leader of the Star Alliance was almost completely isolated. He had become the laughingstock of everyone, and now he was being wrongly accused by his own people. His heart was filled with anger. Almost as soon as he left the main square, he appeared in Mo Juling's mansion. Bang! After the leader of the Star Alliance kicked open the door to Mo Juling's room, he didn't care how pathetic she looked and directly slapped her and sent her flying out. At this moment he was already fuming with rage. His 2 eyes were as wide as copper bells, filled with anger and anger. He had almost lost his rationality. He didn't show any mercy in that slap at all. Emo Zhuling was originally half lying on the ground because of his weak body. He had one hand on the chair and couldn't get up at all. Now that he had been slapped by the leader of the Star Alliance, Emo Zhuling was still slapped by the leader of the Star Alliance. Although the leader didn't use his strength, he relied on the strength of his body. He screamed in pain from the force of the leader of the Star Alliance. His entire body flew up in an instant and landed heavily on the bed. Immediately, the entire bed made of heavy red sandalwood disintegrated under the force of Emo Zhuling's blow. Countless red sandalwood shavings mixed with wooden sticks flew toward Emo Zhuling's face. She immediately screamed in pain. After all, she didn't have any defensive strength at all. Father. Chapter 2844. Father, what's wrong with you? Did I do something wrong? Emo Zhuling still didn't know that what he had done had been exposed. He still thought that everything he had done was flawless. The moment she said that, the leader of the Star Alliance's eyes turned even redder. He lifted his leg and kicked Emo Zhuling away. Why are you asking me about what you did? His face was filled with rage. Almost instantly he kicked Emo Zhuling through the wall of the room. With a loud boom she crashed into the courtyard outside. Emo Zhuling opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. She didn't think that the leader of the Star Alliance would be so ruthless. In fact, even if she did, she wouldn't have been able to avoid it. Because the leader of the Star Alliance wasn't someone she could deal with. If the black fog was here, she might be able to borrow its strength to resist for a while. But now, the black fog's strength was greatly damaged and it had already escaped. It wouldn't come back until its strength recovered. Therefore, Emo Zhuling could only deal with the leader of the Star Alliance alone. How could he be a match for him? Father, even if you want me to die, at least let me know the reason. Emo Zhuling saw that the leader of the Star Alliance was charging towards her again in a rage. She immediately shouted, "What did I do wrong? Or did you just believe whatever I said and want to attack me? I'm your daughter." The moment she said that, the leader of the Star Alliance clenched his fists so tightly that they cracked. He glared at Emo Zhuling and said coldly, "It's because you're my daughter that I haven't killed you yet. Bastard. You're still being dishonest at a time like this." As he spoke, he raised his hand and sent Emo Zhuling flying with another slap. He shouted angrily, "Do you know that I've become a laughingstock because of you?" He raised his hand and pointed at Emo Zhuling. "The reputation and prestige I've built up over half of my life have all been destroyed by your hands. Tell me honestly now, how did you get into the mirror array? What kind of secret does it hold? If you don't tell me these things, I will beat you to death here today. I'll take it as if my marriage to the family G never happened." The leader of the Star Alliance waved his hands as he spoke, his entire body bursting with anger. He was able to suppress his anger and not kill Emo Zhuling because of her engagement with Ji Feiyu. Now the family G's marriage proposal was in Star City. They had already formally requested to see him and were only waiting for his reply. If not for this, he might have strangled Emo Zhuling to death the moment the matter was exposed. He had always protected this daughter of his like a pearl or a treasure. He loved her dearly and had never treated her unfairly. Whatever she wanted, as long as it was within his means, he would definitely give it to her. But how did she repay him? She had almost destroyed his Star Alliance and his power. He could forget about offending Yi Qianxian. He had forgiven her for not knowing about it. But this time, why did she provoke Su Xiaoxiao and the others? Hadn't she caused enough trouble for him? If it weren't for the fact that Emo Zhuling and Ji Feiyu could benefit him enough to reverse his previous decline, he would have killed Emo Zhuling already. Chapter 2845. The leader of the Star Alliance was furious. Emo Zhuling, on the other hand, was stunned. "Father, what did you say?" She looked at the leader of the Star Alliance and wanted to continue denying it. "What mirror formation? What do you mean by going in? I don't know what you're talking about." If it was just Su Xiaoxiao's side of the story, she only needed to deny it. However, Emo Zhuling didn't know that it wasn't just Su Xiaoxiao's side of the story. The mirror formation was in front of her, so she couldn't deny it. She didn't go outside to ask for information, so she didn't know that the news had spread all over the Star Alliance. Even if the leader of the Star Alliance tried his best to block it, those who should know already knew. Those who didn't know, unless they deliberately didn't want to hear it, would talk about it in private. What she said was already exposed to the entire Star Alliance. The leader of the Star Alliance took the blame because of her, making people mistakenly think that he helped Emo Zhuling do it. He also got the secret of the mirror formation and secretly gave it to Mo Zhuling to deal with Su Xiaoxiao and the others. He didn't care about the safety of the Star Alliance at all. At this moment he had no way to defend himself at all. His prestige had plummeted to the extreme. Seeing that Mo Zhuling was still pretending to know nothing, he couldn't hide his anger and murderous intent. With a bang, he directly stomped the bluestone road in front of him into smithereens. A large amount of gravel and dirt flew towards Mo Zhuling like sharp weapons with a violent and terrifying force. Ah! Mo Zhuling screamed. He was riddled with holes by the gravel and dirt. His whole body was injured. Blood flowed out of his body. Even the hair on her head was covered in blood. It was disheveled and scattered all over the place. She looked like a madwoman. She was battered and exhausted. "Father!" she screamed. She didn't know why the leader of the Star Alliance would be so cruel to her. Shouldn't he be listening to her sobs? Or was it that he was so afraid of that man that he would kill Su Xiaoxiao and the others just to appease them, regardless of whether it was fabricated or not? Mo Zhuling's heart was filled with hatred. However, at this moment the Star Alliance's leader's voice sounded. "You still refuse to repent. The mirror array has already announced what you have done to the world. Not only that, Zhu Yujie and the others also testified against you. Under such circumstances you're still saying that you're innocent. So, when you entered the mirror matrix you said you liked that man and wanted to torture Su Xiaoxiao and the others to death. Are you a ghost?" The leader of the Star Alliance was furious. He strode towards Mo Zhuling. The latter was completely immersed in his words. Her heart was filled with disbelief. How was this possible? Under the cover of the black fog, the mirror array couldn't possibly detect her existence. How could it record the scene of her dealing with Su Xiaoxiao and the others and show it to everyone? This was impossible. How was this possible? However, just as she was trying to deny it, she suddenly thought of something. The little white cat, it was that little white cat. It must be her. All of his actions had been for naught. Mo Zhuling broke down and wanted to scream. Chapter 2846. Mo Zhuling's heart trembled when she saw his merciless and murderous move. Then she hurriedly shouted, "Wait, father. I'll speak." As soon as she spoke, the Star Alliance's alliance master's hand froze. He coldly looked at her and said, "What is it? What is the secret of the mirror array?" He urgently needed this secret to shut the mouths of the elders so that they would not be able to make things difficult for him. At the same time, he also needed to restore his reputation. However, Mo Zhuling's eyes kept changing. She did not dare to speak about the black fog. When the black fog had found her, it had said that if she dared to speak about anything related to it, even if it was only a little, she would suffer an extremely terrible punishment. That punishment would definitely be much worse than when she had been smashed into a pulp by Situ Mei. Mo Zhuling did not dare to disobey the black fog's orders. The black fog had single-handedly saved her from the mud she had been before. She was very clear about the black fog's methods. It could definitely make her suffer a fate worse than death. Therefore, she clenched her teeth and did not dare to reveal anything related to the black fog. But if she did not talk about the black fog, who else could she talk about? Was there any way to get her out of this dangerous situation? Seeing the Star Alliance's alliance master's face darken again because of her silence, and his killing intent rose again, she immediately clenched her teeth. Suddenly, a person's name flashed through her mind. Then, as if she had grabbed onto a life-saving straw, she hurriedly shouted, "It's young Master Lu Yu. Father, it's the young master of the 7-star Fields Jinchang region's Lu family. Father, it was because of his help that I was able to enter the mirror array," Mo Zhuling said. She suddenly cried and said, "Father, I didn't mean to hide it from you. It's just that young Master Lu Yu's identity is special. I couldn't tell you, so I kept hiding it from you. Father, I just can't accept it." "Why should you? Those people from the True Spill continent are only people from a low-level continent, but they are almost above you. You should be the ruler of the Star Desolate region. And because of them, I almost became a cripple and could only lie on the bed like mud for the rest of my life. I just can't accept it. That's why I borrowed young Master Lu Yu's hand to teach them a lesson in the mirror array. Father, please forgive me. Can you forgive me?" Mo Zhuling knelt at the feet of the leader of the Star Alliance. The latter's expression kept changing. He looked at her and said coldly, "Why would young Master Lu Yu help you?" He already believed half of Mo Zhuling's words. Even if the other party wanted to deceive him, he couldn't have gone into such detail. Furthermore, whether this matter was true or not, he would be able to find out as soon as he investigated. Chapter 2847. Before she finished speaking, the Star Alliance's leader had already understood. Young Master Lu, you must have taken a fancy to his daughter. That was why he helped her enter the mirror array to deal with Su Xiaoxiao and the others. He just didn't know how much young Master Lu you liked Mo Zhuling. If it was deep enough, as the Star Alliance's leader thought of this, his expression completely relaxed. He looked at Mo Zhuling and said, "Why didn't you tell me this earlier?" If he had known that this was done by a young master of an aristocratic family from the 7-star field, then he wouldn't have been so embarrassed when facing the Star Alliance's elders. However, Mo Zhuling didn't dare to tell him that she had originally planned to use young Master Lu Yu's identity as a trump card. When Luo Qingtong appeared in the True Spill continent, then she would use her to deal with her. Now that she had exposed it ahead of time, she didn't know if that would alert the enemy and allow that bitch Luo Qingtong to escape. Mo Zhuling thought of this and suddenly clenched her teeth. The Star Alliance's leader didn't expect her to give him an answer, because he had already thought of the reason why Mo Zhuling didn't dare to tell him. He looked at Mo Zhuling and asked, "Do you already know? The Ji clan's people have already arrived in Star City, and they have requested to see me. If I'm not mistaken, they should be here to propose marriage." As soon as the Star Alliance's leader said this, Mo Zhuling's expression suddenly changed. "What?" she cried out in alarm. "The family Ji's people have already arrived? How could this be? How could they be so fast?" Mo Zhuling's expression changed. She originally thought that the family Ji's people wouldn't act so quickly. That was because they didn't have much intention of forming a marriage alliance with their side to begin with. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let her get engaged to a trash. At the thought of Ji Feiyu, Mo Zhuling gritted his teeth. He was extremely unwilling to give up. Originally, she was very happy that she could be engaged to the son of the 8-star Dongting family Ji. In the end, by chance, she found out that the legitimate son of the family Ji that she was going to marry in the future was just an abandoned son of a family, a good-for-nothing. Her heart could no longer remain calm. Why should she marry a piece of trash? So what if he was the direct descendant of an 8-star domain's aristocratic family? Without strength, he was no match for any of the scions of the aristocratic families on their side. She was the dignified young mistress of the Star Alliance, yet she had to marry such a person. How could she accept this? Therefore, when he saw Yi Chenxian, Mo Zhuling knew that it was very likely that he was not from their star field, but someone from a high-ranking star field. He immediately prepared to recruit him. But who would have thought that he was someone she couldn't touch? Because of this incident, her life was almost ruined. She had been bedridden for more than half a year, living a life worse than death. As she thought about it, Mo Zhuling developed some hatred for the Dongting family Ji. After all, in her opinion, if the Dongting family Ji hadn't looked down on her and forced her to get engaged to a piece of trash, she might not have ended up like this. Mo Zhuling had never thought of looking for the reason from herself. She just wanted to deal with all the people who had wronged her, and the family Ji was one of them. She had originally planned to deal with the family Ji after she dealt with Luo Qingtong. She hadn't expected them to come knocking on her door. Chapter 2849. The chief of the Star Alliance pushed the blame of him being too heavy-handed to Elder Fong and the others. In fact, he was angry, so he came to find trouble with Mo Zhuling. But he didn't mention it. He helped Mo Zhuling up from the ground. The latter was lying on the ground. His entire body was covered in blood and mud. It was a tragic sight. But Mo Zhuling didn't dare to be dissatisfied with the Star Alliance's leader because of this. This was because she was relying on the Alliance Master of the Star Alliance. Because she was the leader's daughter, had the identity of the Star Alliance's eldest daughter, and was full of hatred for Luo Qingtong, the Black Fog chose her. Otherwise, who knew if the leader would choose someone else to support her? Because of this, even though Mo Zhuling's heart was filled with hatred, and all the bones in his body felt as if someone had taken them apart and replaced them, and the pain was unbearable, Mo Zhuling didn't dare to be dissatisfied with the Star Alliance's leader. He even smiled and said that he was fine, and thanked his father for his concern. But Mo Zhuling was like this to the Star Alliance's leader, but not to others. Especially to the family Ji's people. At this moment, she transferred all her hatred and pain from being beaten by the Star Alliance's leader to the family Ji's people. "Father, you don't have to tell the family Ji's people that we want to break off the engagement, so as to avoid unnecessary trouble." As she spoke, she swallowed an elixir to relieve the external injuries and pain on her body. She then said to the Star Alliance Master, "Previously, we were afraid of the Ji family's strength and identity, so we didn't dare to tell them to break off the engagement. But now we already have young Master Lu Yu's support. Why should we be afraid of the family Ji's people? They used a piece of trash to propose to us. It's obviously a humiliation to us. Father, don't you want to get back at them? I think we can publicly break off the engagement when the family Ji proposes. This way we can let the family Ji's people have a taste of how they humiliated us. Let them know that us father and daughter are not to be trifled with. Besides, if young Master Lu Yu comes to propose in person, it will be a great honor for you, father, and you will have more prestige in the Star Alliance. So as to avoid those old dogs in front of Feng Cheng from riding on your head by relying on that command plate that's completely useless to them. As Mo Zhuling said this, he laughed coldly. When the leader of the Star Alliance heard her words, his heart skipped a beat. This was indeed an excellent method. Firstly, she could vent her anger at the family Ji's perfunctory attitude. Secondly, it could also increase his prestige. To be honest, ever since Elder Feng and the others had obtained the young emperor command plate, he had always been at a disadvantage because of what Mo Zhuling had done to the True Spill continent. If this continued, he might not be able to keep his position as the leader of the Star Alliance. This was also the reason why the leader of the Star Alliance was so angry that he attacked Mo Zhuling so ruthlessly. This was because he had indeed been forced to retreat step by Elder Feng and the others. And now, Mo Zhuling had come to add to his troubles. The Crown Prince token could not protect Elder Feng and the others, but it could make Elder Feng hesitate to attack. This was because they were the ones who had offended Yi Qianxian in the past. But what if the person who attacked was Lu Yu? Lu Yu did not know about the young emperor command plate. And the command plate did not exist for Elder Feng and the others. If they did not want to be destroyed by Lu Yu, they could only be respectful to him. Chapter 2850. The Star Alliance's leader nodded. Okay, that's fine. But Ling Er, are you sure that young Master Lu Yu will come and propose to you at that time? The Star Alliance's leader was a bit worried. Not only would they fail to establish their prestige, but they would also become a laughingstock. Moreover, the family Ji's people were not to be trifled with. Father, don't worry. Mo Zhuling's face was filled with confidence. She wasn't worried at all. She had borrowed the power of the Black Fog to hook up with young Master Lu Yu. She wasn't worried at all that he wouldn't come. Because he wouldn't be willing to give up on her. Otherwise, he wouldn't have proposed to her so many times before. If it weren't for the fact that she wanted to keep him as a trump card, Mo Zhuling would have already agreed. Then he would have asked the family Ji to cancel the engagement, ruthlessly slapping the family Ji's face. But it wasn't too late. When the family Ji's people came, she would ruthlessly humiliate them. Especially that useless trash who only had the title of family Ji's son. He was the most important. With his body that couldn't cultivate and had a short lifespan, he actually dared to agree to the family Ji's engagement and propose to her. He was simply a toad lusting after a swan's flesh. Ridiculous. Such a person should be ruthlessly stomped into the mud so that he wouldn't jump out and disgust others. As Mo Zhuling thought this, he suddenly sneered. The Alliance Master of the Star Alliance was satisfied when he heard this and immediately went to make preparations. As for explaining to the Star Alliance's elders, he had already forgotten about it. In any case, when the family Ji's people were humiliated and the engagement was cancelled, those elders would know what Mo Zhuling was relying on. Would they dare to question young Master Lu Yu as to why he was helping Mo Zhuling deal with the people of True Spill continent? What a joke. The Star Alliance's leader left with his head held high and his chest puffed out. He was indescribably proud of himself. Mo Zhuling, on the other hand, calmed down and recuperated. At this time, in the room where Ji Feiyu and the others were staying, Luo Qingtong had been jumping around for a long time. It was not easy for her to feel Ji Feiyu's pulse, but she was stunned for a while. Because there was nothing wrong with Ji Feiyu's pulse. He was a completely healthy person, and Luo Qingtong had also used her eye technique to check his meridians, and found that his meridians were also intact. Under such circumstances, how could he be a cripple who couldn't cultivate? Luo Qingtong also wondered if the problem was in Ji Feiyu's dantian. Therefore, she suppressed her impatience and laid in Ji Feiyu's arms for a period of time. She looked at him from head to toe, inside and out. There was nothing wrong. His dantian was perfect to the extreme. It didn't even seem like the dantian of someone who couldn't cultivate. This was because an ordinary person's dantian was completely closed off before they started cultivating. The channels that connected to the meridians were not open. They could only be opened when one's aura revolved and their strength increased. But Ji Feiyu's dantian was naturally open. Every channel that connected to the meridians was incomparably smooth. This physique was almost comparable to Yi Qianxian's heavenly vein body. Although it wasn't as exaggerated as Yi Qianxian's, his strength was increasing almost all the time. Moreover, he was able to naturally connect with the meridians, as if he were a true child of the heavenly Tao, born with a grasp of the world's great Tao. Chapter 2851. What did it mean to not encounter a bottleneck? Luo Qingtong could be considered a lucky example. From the beginning of her cultivation until now, she had relied on her blood pupil to obtain a lot of opportunities. However, when she was promoted to the Venerable Realm, she was still stuck for a period of time. If she hadn't met Yi Qianxian in the abandoned continent and experienced several battles with the weak against the strong, she might not have been able to smoothly break through the bottleneck and promote to the Venerable Realm. However, Ji Feiyu's innate dantian was perfect, so he would almost never encounter a problem like Luo Qingtong's. More importantly, this bastard was a monstrous genius who was knowledgeable and multi-talented. What was an erudite and multi-talented genius? Luo Qingtong saw with her own eyes that Suiyu and the others came to consult Ji Feiyu with questions about cultivation that they didn't understand. As a result, this fellow, damn it. He clearly couldn't cultivate, but he was able to completely understand the cultivation problems that Suiyu and the others had raised. He could easily solve the cultivation problems that troubled Suiyu and the others, so that their strength could be further improved. Luo Qingtong only knew now that Suiyu and the others, as Ji Feiyu's personal maidservants, were stronger than most of the experts around him. They even dared to go against Qin Xiong and take him down a notch. It turned out that it was because they had Ji Feiyu, such a super genius, as their backing. No wonder their strength was so equal and almost the same. When Luo Qingtong saw it before, she was a little surprised. She felt that with such a lineup around Ji Feiyu, his life in the family should be very good. Otherwise, how could there be so many maidservants with good aptitude by his side? It turned out that this was not because Suiyu and the others' aptitude was too good, but because Ji Feiyu's ability as their master was too strong. Luo Qingtong noticed that Ji Feiyu's answers to Suiyu and the others' questions were entirely based on his experiences and insights from the ancient books. That was to say, although this guy couldn't cultivate, he could understand all the cultivation problems and key points only by reading some cultivation classics. He could even give Suiyu and the others some guidance. If this wasn't a ghost, then what was? If he was allowed to cultivate, who knew how much his strength would increase? After all, the strengths of Suiyu and the others were around the Violet Exalt realm. In other words, Ji Feiyu couldn't even draw energy into his body, but he was able to guide Purple Venerable Realm experts in their cultivation. Luo Qingtong had been lying by his side for the past few days. She had also been able to hear a lot of his experiences. She had really benefited a lot. Many parts of his body felt enlightened. His comprehension and application of strength and power had been greatly improved. One had to know that the reason why she suppressed her strength and didn't slowly recover was entirely because her strength had increased too quickly on the abandoned continent. Her understanding of the strength of the Violet Exalt realm wasn't stable enough. She was afraid that it would affect her future advancement. But now that she heard Ji Feiyu's explanation, she understood a lot. It wouldn't be long before she didn't need to suppress her strength and slowly recovered it. Damn, I really owe him a big favor. However, she still had no clue about Ji Feiyu's problem of not being able to cultivate. Luo Qingtong thought so and immediately scratched the ground with her claws in annoyance. One had to know that she came to help others, but in the end she was the one being helped. Chapter 2852. Luo Qingtong was thinking about this when Ji Feiyu, who was beside her, saw her actions and immediately laughed. What's wrong? Are you unhappy? He looked at the little white cat in front of him and was in a very good mood. He didn't know why, but he was very happy when he saw this little white cat. The other party's eyes seemed to be able to speak. Sometimes, Ji Feiyu even felt like he wasn't talking to a cat, but to a person. Most importantly, the little fellow looked very obedient. When she was by his side, she never made a fuss or jumped around. Every time she did something unexpected, it was also very cute. For example, she liked to play with her hand. Ji Feiyu always indulged her in playing around. Anyway, she wouldn't reach out her claws to hurt him. She would just step on his hand and play with it seriously. That look was very funny. Speaking of which, if it weren't for her appearance being too funny, Ji Feiyu would have thought that she was checking his pulse. Thinking of how she tried to spread her 2 toes and put them on his wrist, Ji Feiyu wanted to laugh. Now that he saw her lying on the ground and scratching her claws unhappily, he thought for a moment and immediately put his other hand in front of her. Shoo. Looking at the little white cat looking up at him in surprise, Ji Feiyu smiled. As if he was talking to someone, he directly raised a finger and placed it on his lips. He shushed her softly, indicating for her not to scream. Come play with me. But you can't scratch with your claws. You have to be gentle. Otherwise you'll be discovered by Sueyu and the others. At that time they'll definitely nag me. Also you won't be able to play next time. As he spoke, he lovingly moved his other injured hand in front of Luo Qingtong and pulled open the sleeve on his wrist. He exposed his wound in front of the little white cat. Ji Feiyu wondered if this little white cat had gotten tired of playing with his other hand, so she was unhappy. Since that was the case, he would let her play with his hand as well. Anyway, although the wound on his hand had not completely healed, it was no longer bleeding. As long as the little guy paid attention and didn't step on it too hard, it shouldn't be a problem. As he thought of this, he dotingly patted Luo Qingtong's head, saying, "Come, let's play." When he said that, Luo Qingtong was speechless. What was this guy doing? Did he think that she took his pulse every day because she was playing with him? Furthermore, she wanted to play with his wound just because she was unhappy and didn't have anything to play with. Was she too careless or too stupid? I'm a cat now. I'll give your wound a scratch and a bite and you'll know how to cry. Luo Qingtong was speechless for a while. She raised her claws to push his hand away. However, just as her claws touched Ji Feiyu's hand, because the latter moved forward, Luo Qingtong's claws touched Ji Feiyu's wound in an instant. The latter groaned in pain, but Luo Qingtong suddenly straightened her body. Meow. Luo Qingtong's eyes were filled with surprise. She stared at the wound on Ji Feiyu's hand with her round eyes. The flesh on the latter's wound was rolling, and the scene on it was very bloody. Chapter 2853. Wang. In Luo Qingtong's mind, the consciousness of the heavenly spirit would begin to beat. Just as Luo Qingtong's claws touched Ji Feiyu's wound, the consciousness of the heavenly spirit would in her mind began to beat. It had to be known that ever since the heavenly spirit would block the black fog formed by the resentment of the powerhouses in the fallen immortal land, it had been silent without any movement. Luo Qingtong originally wanted to wait until she returned to the true Spill continent before leaving. At that time she would go to the other star domains and see if she could restore the heavenly spirit wood. She didn't expect that the seed of the heavenly spirit would suddenly tremble because she touched Ji Feiyu's wound. It had to be known that the heavenly spirit would fed on souls, especially the power of resentment between heaven and earth, the power of Yin souls, and the source of its power. Could it be that Ji Feiyu's problem of not being able to cultivate had something to do with his soul? As Luo Qingtong thought this, she suddenly opened her blood-red eyes and looked at Ji Feiyu's wound. When she had probed Ji Feiyu's body before, she had intentionally or unintentionally avoided his wound. The main reason was that when she was squatting on Ji Feiyu's shoulder, Sueyu and the others had told her not to touch Ji Feiyu's wound. Luo Qingtong had unconsciously ignored Ji Feiyu's wound. When she had probed Ji Feiyu's body, she hadn't found anything wrong with his body. It was reasonable to say that there shouldn't be any problems with his wound, so Luo Qingtong had ignored it. Now that the heavenly spirit wood's consciousness had trembled, Luo Qingtong had reacted. She was afraid that she had overlooked something. Ji Feiyu's body didn't have any problems, but that didn't mean that he really didn't have any problems. This matter was most likely related to his soul. And the only way for her to probe his soul would be through this wound of his. With that thought in mind, Luo Qingtong immediately pounced on Ji Feiyu's wound. She carefully examined the wound on Ji Feiyu's hand. Then she thought for a moment and jumped out of the room. After a while, she jumped back in with a bottle of medicine in her mouth. Behind her was a group of maidservants who were chasing after her. "Hey kitten, give me back my medicine. You can't play with that." Sueyu and the others chased after Luo Qingtong's figure and rushed to Ji Feiyu's room. However, they saw Luo Qingtong pouring the medicinal liquid in her mouth onto Ji Feiyu's wound. They were immediately surprised. "So you brought the medicine here to treat young master's injuries? She's really obedient." Ji Feiyu was originally groaning in pain because Luo Qingtong's claws poked at his wound. His forehead was full of sweat. His body was very strange. He couldn't be injured at all. If he was injured, he would be in great pain. Not only that, his wound couldn't be healed by medicine. Chapter 2854. The moment the medicinal power was attached to Ji Feiyu's wound, Luo Qingtong's blood-red eyes clearly revealed the unknown scene. Wisps of grayish-black aura rose from Ji Feiyu's flesh and blood, entangling and corroding the medicinal power. The wisps of medicinal power were devoured by the grayish-black marks. Slowly the medicinal power was exhausted. When the grayish-black marks rose, Luo Qingtong also saw them clearly. The grayish-black aura completely intertwined into a net, wrapping Ji Feiyu's entire body in it. The aura permeated his limbs, bones and flesh and couldn't be separated at all. It was as if his entire body had become one. The grayish-black marks finally intertwined and sank into the top of Ji Feiyu's head. As expected, his illness came from his soul. When the grayish-black aura appeared, Luo Qingtong's consciousness of the heavenly spiritual tree in her mind trembled even more violently. It released a strong message to Luo Qingtong. If not for the fact that Luo Qingtong's soul was attached to Xiao Tuanzi's body and the heavenly spiritual tree's physical body wasn't by her side, the heavenly spiritual tree's seed would have already pounced on Ji Feiyu. It coveted the grayish-black aura very much. If it could absorb the grayish-black aura, it would be able to germinate from its seed state and obtain a new life. When the heavenly spiritual tree's consciousness trembled, Luo Qingtong also clearly saw that the grayish-black marks sank into Ji Feiyu's head, and an extremely thick blood-red line connected to the void behind him. Obviously, the grayish-black marks weren't the only problem on Ji Feiyu's body. There was something behind them that was controlling and connecting them. Simply removing the grayish-black marks wouldn't be of any use. Just as she was thinking about this, Little Pig's voice rang out in her mind. Ah, blood curse. Damn, there are still people who use such a sinister method to harm their own descendants? Little Pig was guarding Luo Qingtong's body in the tavern. When he felt the heavenly spiritual tree's consciousness tremble, he separated a part of his consciousness to take a look. He didn't expect to discover such a shocking matter. Blood curse. It was a method of using the bloodline connection to steal the lifespan and soul power of one's bloodline to provide for oneself. This was a type of evil magic. Who in the family Ji was so vicious that they actually planted this blood curse on Ji Feiyu's body? Moreover, it was the most vicious soul blood curse. The victim's soul would weaken and in the end they would completely dissipate and die. His soul power and lifespan would be completely absorbed by the person who had planted the blood curse on him. That person would possess all his talents and abilities. This kind of blood curse was extremely insidious. At the same time, because the conditions for casting the curse were extremely harsh, it was not easy to succeed. Once it was successful, it succeeded. The curse was found, the curses was killed. She didn't expect Ji Feiyu to be afflicted with such a blood curse. No wonder his body was healthy, but his Xiantian Dantian was perfect, yet he was trash. His soul power was constantly being absorbed, and he couldn't withstand the pressure of cultivation. Chapter 2855. After listening to Little Pig's explanation, Luo Qingtong immediately understood what was going on. So that's how it is. She finally understood what was going on. No wonder Ji Feiyu's body was weak and full of vitality, even though she felt that his body was very healthy and full of vitality. It turned out that the soul power in his body was constantly being robbed by someone through the aura of the blood curse. Due to the slow process and the concealment of the bloodline's aura, the blood curse had completely merged with Ji Feiyu's body. Therefore, Luo Qingtong's blood-red eyes couldn't see the blood curse before it was fully revealed. This was because the blood curse was a part of Ji Feiyu's body and was only being controlled by someone through the bloodline connection. However, once Luo Qingtong discovered the existence of the blood curse, it would be troublesome for her to remove it. This was because even if she could remove the power of the blood curse from Ji Feiyu's body, as long as the person who cast the curse wanted to, it could still continue to curse Ji Feiyu. Therefore, the solution to the blood curse would ultimately depend on the person who cast the curse. Otherwise, Luo Qingtong wouldn't be able to do anything even if she removed the blood curse. On the contrary, it would only alert the other party and alert them. When Ji Feiyu returned to the Ji family, he was afraid that what awaited him would be the fate of death. This was because the person who cast the blood curse definitely wouldn't leave any variables behind. With this thought in mind, Luo Qingtong immediately knelt on the ground with a frown. It seemed that if she wanted to completely free Ji Feiyu from the blood curse, she would have to return to the family Ji with him. Fortunately, the power of the blood curse in his body seemed to be a rare tonic for the heavenly spiritual wood. This way, returning to the family Ji with him wasn't a loss. She could even return the favor while she was at it. With this thought in mind, Luo Qingtong no longer felt conflicted. However, even if she couldn't remove the power of the blood curse for the time being, Luo Qingtong couldn't let it continue to absorb Ji Feiyu's soul power. Otherwise, Luo Qingtong didn't know how long Ji Feiyu could last. If he was killed by the person who cast the blood curse, then it would be troublesome. With this thought in mind, Luo Qingtong immediately straightened her body with a meow. At this time, Sui Yu and the others had already left. Previously, they were afraid that Luo Qingtong had picked up the medicine bottle and drank it by mistake. Now that they saw that she had picked it up for their young master, they did not pursue the matter. They only greeted Ji Feiyu and left directly. After they left, Luo Qingtong jumped onto Ji Feiyu's body. Meow. The latter was looking at her with a smile. He wasn't annoyed when she ran onto his back. But when he saw her constantly scratching his clothes, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Hey little guy, what are you doing? Be careful not to fall. As he spoke, he raised his hand to take Luo Qingtong off his back. However, the latter glared at him and used her claws to scratch his hand away. Seeing Luo Qingtong persevering and using her claws to scratch his clothes, Ji Feiyu finally compromised. Okay. I'll let you play, okay? Ji Feiyu looked helpless and took off his clothes. Otherwise, Luo Qingtong would have dug a big hole in his clothes. Chapter 2856. Ji Feiyu really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If it was someone else, they would definitely drive the little white cat away. But Ji Feiyu's temperament was generous and gentle, and he liked this little white cat very much. He felt that his mood was much better with it accompanying him. Therefore, he didn't get angry at her, but he had no choice but to take off his inner clothes. Of course, this was also because the person in front of him was a cat. Otherwise, he would never do such a thing. Even his personal maidservants, other than bandaging him when he was injured, Ji Feiyu usually wouldn't let them serve him close to help him change clothes or bathe. His personality was shy and simple, and at the same time he regarded Sueyu and the others as his younger sisters. He definitely wouldn't instruct them to do such a thing. What's more, he didn't want to be a cripple in terms of cultivation, and also a cripple in terms of life. Therefore, he had always taken care of the matters in his life by himself. And when Ji Feiyu took off his inner clothes, Luo Qingtong also raised her claws and gathered a force. With her soul power as the foundation, she drew a dragon snake inscription on his back. This was naturally a life-saving inscription pattern drawn on his body that could resist the suction force of the blood curse. This inscription pattern was drawn by Luo Qingtong's soul power. Almost as soon as it immersed into Ji Feiyu's body, it walked through his limbs and bones, isolating the blood curse power that had fused and wrapped Ji Feiyu's body. Ji Feiyu felt that the intense pain from his wounds had lessened by a lot. This was completely because when he was injured, it was equivalent to drawing a knife on the blood curse power in his body, destroying the blood curse power's absorption and traces of the blood curse power. Under such circumstances, the blood curse power's backlash naturally doubled the absorption of the soul power in his body, causing his body to become even weaker, and the pain from his wounds became even more unbearable. Therefore, it was abnormally painful and torturous. At this time, Luo Qingtong isolated the absorption of the blood curse power in his body. The pain tolerance of his wounds returned to normal, and naturally it wasn't so painful. At the same time, his soul power no longer disappeared and his body was not so weak. Naturally, the feeling of pain was not so obvious. And when Ji Feiyu was surprised by the changes in his wounds, Luo Qingtong jumped down from his body again, and then her figure disappeared in front of him. After a while, she appeared in front of him with a bottle of pills in her mouth. Meow. Luo Qingtong put the pill bottle in her mouth on the ground and pushed it towards Ji Feiyu. This medicinal pill was naturally obtained from Sueyu and the others. And Luo Qingtong. And Qingtong to Qingtong to Qingtong. To Qingtong Qingtong. To de Qingtong. To Qingtong. To Qingtong to Qingtong to Qingtong. T. Kinkingtong to Qingtong. Her to Qingtong, these guys, I'm trying to save your young master. You're making it seem like I'm playing around. In fact, in the eyes of Sueyu and the others, Luo Qingtong was playing around? But they were also willing to indulge Luo Qingtong. Anyway, she was using their pills and she was using them on their young master. What was wrong with that? Even if they knew that these pills were useless for their young master's injuries, there was no harm in it, right? It was enough to make their young master happy for a while. Since this little white cat came to their side, their young master's face was smiling more than before. Chapter 2857. After getting the bottle of elixir, Luo Qingtong immediately ran to a remote corner with the bottle of elixir in her mouth. She carefully poured out the elixir in the bottle with her cat claws. Then she engraved a medicinal inscription on it. She needed some of the efficacy of this elixir, but she couldn't use Tuanzi's body to extract the efficacy of this elixir. Fortunately, there were medicinal inscriptions in the inscription technique, which could strengthen and purify the efficacy of the elixir. Luo Qingtong opened her bloody eyes, removed the efficacy that she didn't want and purified it. Very soon, it finished needing a new pill and was successful. With this bottle of elixir she quickly returned to Ji Feiyu. The latter didn't know about this at all. At this moment he looked at the elixir that the little fellow had poured out of the bottle. It was so badly needed that it didn't look like an elixir but a lump of mud. His face was full of helplessness and indulgence. This elixir had been played with by this little fellow and looked very bad, but Ji Feiyu didn't show any disdain on his face. Is this for me? For me to eat? He pinched the elixir that looked like a mud ball and looked at Luo Qingtong. Meow. Luo Qingtong nodded and pushed the empty bottle in front of her forward. Then she raised her claws and scratched his hand that was holding the pill, urging him to eat it quickly. Otherwise, the efficacy that was specially gathered and purified by the medicinal inscription technique would dissipate into the elixir again. At that time she would lose the efficacy of the elixir that she wanted to make for Ji Feiyu. She also knew that the elixir she made now didn't look very good. But she didn't have hands and feet, and it wasn't her original body, so she couldn't refine the elixir at all. She could only let Ji Feiyu eat this elixir. If he didn't want to eat it, then he didn't have this blessing. Anyway, the power of the blood curse that she wanted to make for him had been isolated. The power of this elixir was only to provide him with the soul power to recover. At the same time, it was also to let the power of the blood curse have something to absorb, so that the person who put the curse on the family Ji wouldn't find anything wrong and forcibly strengthen the power of the blood curse. At that time the unlucky one would still be Ji Feiyu. For her there was no loss. Looking at the little white cat's actions, Ji Feiyu's heart felt warm. This elixir looked so bad. If it was someone else they would definitely not eat it. However, Ji Feiyu didn't mind it at all and directly swallowed the pill. This was the first time he received concern from a cat. The little fellow's protection of him. Wasn't it just a dirty elixir? What was it? In fact, when Ji Feiyu saw the pill bottle he knew that Luo Qingtong must have gotten this pill from Suiyu and the others. Thinking of the scene where it picked up the medicinal liquid for him and poured it on his wound, Ji Feiyu smiled. Seeing him eat the elixir, Luo Qingtong was very satisfied. Fortunately, the other party didn't waste her painstaking efforts. Otherwise, she wouldn't have bothered with him. With her cat-like body, it would be very difficult for her to make such an elixir for him. If he didn't eat it, it would save her a lot of trouble. After Ji Feiyu ate this elixir, he immediately noticed an obvious change. He felt that the weakness in his body seemed to have lessened. The feeling of being very weak all the time in the past, as if he could faint at any time after taking 2 steps, seemed to be gone. He felt indescribably relaxed and clear-minded, as if he had lived a new life. Chapter 28:59. Qin Xiong stood outside the courtyard with a cold expression. He could vaguely hear the sounds of crying and laughing coming from Ji Feiyu's room, but he didn't care at all. He didn't know what was going on in Ji Feiyu's room, but ever since Ji Feiyu injured himself last time, the sound of Suiyu and the others crying could be heard from time to time. It was probably the same this time. Thus, Qin Xiong couldn't be bothered to investigate. As long as he safely protected Ji Feiyu until the marriage proposal was successful and sent him back to the family Ji, everything would be fine. Otherwise, this trash would use his safety to threaten him again and suffer an unexpected calamity. Thinking of how Ji Feiyu had used self-harm to threaten him in order to protect that strange girl called Luo Shaoqi, Qin Xiong felt depressed and disdainful. This was probably the only way this piece of trash could threaten him. Thinking of this, Qin Xiong unwillingly lowered his head and reported. When Ji Feiyu and the others heard his voice, the room suddenly fell silent. Not for anything else, but the fact that Ji Feiyu could cultivate couldn't be known to others. Especially if Qin Xiong and the others knew. Otherwise, who knew what they would do? Ji Feiyu was originally the son of the first wife of the family Ji Feiyu. He was naturally a candidate for the position of young master. It was only because he was born with a weak body that he couldn't cultivate that he couldn't become the young master. Now that his illness was cured, who knew how many people in the family Ji would be shocked and depressed? This was definitely something that would turn the family Ji upside down. Before returning to a safe place, this matter couldn't be known to others. Everyone looked at each other and immediately reached a consensus. Young master understands. Commander Qin, you can leave. Suiyu and the others raised their voices. Then they looked at Ji Feiyu. Young master, we will be very happy to know that you can cultivate. But we can't reveal this matter yet. Qin Xiong and the others have been neglectful and disdainful of you. If he knew that young master could cultivate, he would definitely be terrified. He might even kill young master at all costs. So, young master, you can't let them know that you can cultivate. Everything can wait until we return to the family Ji, okay? Yes. Ji Feiyu listened to Sui Yu and the others and nodded. His mind was exquisite. Just by relying on some of the explanations and experiences in the ancient books, he could solve the cultivation problems of Sui Yu and the others. His mind was sharp and agile, so he naturally knew what was best for him. I know. Everything still depends on Kitten. Little guy, thank you so much. He looked at Luo Qingtong, who had struggled out of his arms and was squatting on his shoulder. The latter's expression was indifferent, and he did not say anything as he listened to his words. Speaking of this matter, it was all thanks to Ji Feiyu's good character. Otherwise Luo Qingtong might not have helped him. As the saying goes, there must be an effect for every cause. If Ji Feiyu hadn't helped Luo Qingtong time and time again, she wouldn't have helped him. Ji Feiyu wasn't angry that the little white cat didn't respond to him. He looked at Luo Qingtong and was already sure that it was definitely not an ordinary little white cat. He didn't know what kind of demonic beast it was. It was actually so understanding and could even help him solve his weak body. Could it be some kind of spirit beast? If she hadn't guessed wrong, there was something fishy about this banquet. She had originally thought that these people who came with Ji Feiyu to meet the Star Alliance would find out about Mo Zhuling's tragic situation. These people were most likely here to break off the engagement. After all, what Mo Zhuling had done to Su Xiaoxiao and the others in the mirror array had already been exposed. How could the Star Alliance not deal with her and allow her to arrogantly hold a marriage proposal banquet and marry Ji Feiyu? Just thinking about it made it seem impossible. However, this had happened. How could Luo Qingtong not think too much about it? Other than the black fog, Mo Zhuling might have some other trump card that forced the people of the Star Alliance to compromise in fear. This banquet was held for Ji Feiyu and the others. This was also good. She didn't want to disgust herself by putting Ji Feiyu, a beautiful flower, on top of Mo Zhuling's pile of cow dung. As Luo Qingtong thought about this, she suddenly smiled with great interest. Chapter 2861. While Ji Feiyu and the others were sending off the members of the Star Alliance, somewhere else in Star City. In a luxurious courtyard. A very handsome man picked up a white letter and looked at the contents. He suddenly smiled. Mo Zhuling sent me a letter. She wants me to propose marriage to her at the marriage proposal banquet in 2 days. As he spoke, he casually tore up the letter in his hand. A middle-aged man who looked to be in his 40s or 50s said in a low voice, Mo Zhuling probably thinks that young master is deeply in love with her and that you only want her. His expression was one of disdain. A woman like Mo Zhuling, if not for the fact that she had shown her abilities and the quality of the pills she had taken out were extremely high, she would have been a member of the Star Alliance. Furthermore, her identity as the eldest daughter of the Star Alliance would be of great help to them in their investigation. They might not have bothered with her for so long. Now, she actually wanted young master to propose marriage to her in front of everyone. Did she really think that she was a heavenly daughter who was insufferably arrogant? When he said that, the handsome but slightly cold man snorted and sneered. If she wants me to propose marriage to her, then I'll do it. In any case, whether I marry her or not is up to me. Lu Yu didn't take this matter to heart at all. In his opinion, if he could propose marriage to Mo Zhuling, he could naturally break off the engagement as well. With his family background and power, did he really need to explain anything to Mo Zhuling and the others? What a joke. Moreover, given Mo Zhuling's behavior of seducing him even though she already had a fiancé, it was already an honor to call her Deceit. He could play with this kind of person if he wanted to. If he didn't want to play with her or if she was no longer useful, he could just throw her away. What was the big deal? Therefore he didn't care at all. The members of the Lu family at the 7-star field also thought the same. Yes, young master, you're the one who understands. Your subordinates are not as good as you. The middle-aged man flattered Lu Yu and said, then I'll send her a message immediately and tell her that young master will definitely be there. Yes. Lu Yu responded in a low voice. Then he said, let her be happy for a while. It'll be easier to get information out of her. By the way, you've been investigating for so long. Have you found out where her abilities come from? The quality of the pills Mo Zhuling took out were extremely high. Even Lu Yu and the others would drool at the sight of them. However, there seemed to be a mysterious power behind her, so they didn't dare to casually investigate her. Otherwise, with Mo Zhuling's status, they would have caught her long ago after she revealed such an ability in front of them. They would have skinned her and broken her bones to get to the bottom of her secrets and the source of her pills. It was because of that mysterious power that Lu Yu and the others didn't dare to act rashly. They pretended to be attracted to Mo Zhuling and couldn't extricate themselves. In reality, he was just feigning civility with her. No. The middle-aged man said respectfully. Speaking of which, this matter was really strange. Mo Zhuling's abilities came from a strange place. Those high-grade pills also came from a strange place. After all, they had investigated and found out that Mo Zhuling wasn't an alchemist. Those pills didn't belong to her. However, they couldn't find any clues. Yes, let's put this matter aside for now. Don't alarm the person behind her. Lu Yu coldly snorted and then asked, then what about the True Spill continent? You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.